Vadim Nikolaevich Krasnoselsky, President of the Transnistrian Republic. Thank you very much for agreeing to this interview. We would, of course, like to start with the most pressing issue. This is, of course, gas supplies to your region via Moldova. You recently said that there is cautious optimism. A little earlier you said that there is an agreement on humanitarian gas supplies, but that we need to be a little patient. What stage are we at now?
Yes, just the other day I spoke about cautious optimism. I will explain why. Generally, Transnistria does not put a spoke in the wheel of gas supplies to Transnistria. It is suicidal. Why do we need it? We are cold. Our people are freezing. We need to solve problems. Naturally, in this paradigm, we accept Moldova's condition. It was Moldova that declared that only Moldova Gas can supply gas to Transnistria. We agreed. Although, of course, there are other suppliers that have a Moldovan license. But okay, let's not argue, it's pointless, there is no need. Moldova Gas means Moldova Gas. And on January 18th this year, Tiraspol Transgaz, for its part, sent a corresponding request to Moldova Gas. I confirmed it, saying, go ahead. If you want to supply gas to Transnistria, supply it. We agree with these demands. And then we waited for an offer from our Moldovan colleagues, from Moldova Gas, where the purchases would be made from. And Moldova Gas proposed making these purchases in Europe from a European supplier. We also agreed with these requirements. That is why I spoke of cautious optimism. But what happened next? For some unknown, but understandable reason, the speakers of the President of Moldova, both the President and the Prime Minister himself, began to make completely incomprehensible statements that politicize the process and exclude supplies, blaming Russia, blaming us, Transnistria, for blocking the gas supplies. But this is a lie, based on which, of course, I turned to the President of Moldova and called on her to take heed of the situation and make rational decisions on gas supplies to Transnistria. At the same time, we guaranteed payment for this gas. This is important. That is why we are waiting. And I want to draw attention to the repeated statements of the Moldovan authorities, President Sandu, that Moldova has an open gas pipeline, and we are ready to supply gas to Transnistria. So, deliver it. It's been 5 days already. Even after the 18th, there has been no movement. On the contrary, the processes, in my opinion, are being artificially delayed to aggravate the already difficult situation in Transnistria.
Let's go back a bit. You said that you are being accused of something. What exactly is Chisinau accusing you of?
We have been accused of not accepting Moldova's assistance when it comes to gas supplies. But I cannot understand how this looks like in reality. We have agreed to all of Moldova's demands. Moldova Gas? Go ahead. European supplies through the exchange? Fine. What else do you need? They are making unfounded accusations against us, without revealing the basis of these accusations. Tiraspol is to blame. Russia is to blame. But who is to blame, and for what exactly is unclear. These are all populist explanations, very false with one goal, to confuse and deceive people in reality.
And they don't supply you with gas, as far as I understand, and residents are suffering.
The residents are certainly suffering, but in general, this situation actually came about at midnight on January 1st, when Moldova Gas stopped supplying gas to Transnistria. On December 28th last year, Moldova Gas officially notified Tiraspol Transgaz in Transnistria that they would stop supplying natural gas to Transnistria at midnight on January 1st. There was nothing else in the letter. There were no proposals or scenarios about how events could develop. Issues of assistance and so on were not touched upon. So we were presented with a fait accompli and left to our own device. At the same time, Moldovan officials have repeatedly stated that we can buy gas anywhere, and they will pass it through their network to Transnistria. And as soon as we began to negotiate with one company or another, we meet fierce resistance and an absolutely understandable desire to prevent gas supplies to Transnistria.
What do they want to achieve?
There are actually several scenarios when it comes to their goals. One of the scenarios is to drive Transnistria to despair. This is a desire to see how the Transnistrian leadership failed to cope with the situation, which is not actually happening today. the desire to achieve a complete energy catastrophe, which will turn into a humanitarian catastrophe with the ensuing consequences. The desire to blame Russia for controlling this region. And so this scenario was allowed to develop.
But at the same time, Russia offers humanitarian gas supplies. And Maya Sandu called the supplies of humanitarian gas from Russia illegal. And even if it is vital for people in Transnistria, she will not agree to such actions.
No, today we are not talking about humanitarian gas supplies. We are talking about purchasing gas, Moldova gas, on European spot exchanges or in other companies that supply gas in Europe, and everything with payment.
Even overpayment, compared to what it was before?
Yes, of course, it's not even worth discussing prices. They are 2, 3, 4 times higher than they were before.
But at the same time, Chisinau assures that you are supplied with gas. And it's going to kindergartens and to schools, that all vital supplies are there.
Yes, this is our gas. We saved it in December and left it in the pipeline. And we choose this gas, this pipeline. We saved about 13 million cubic meters of gas in December, knowing that the situation would develop negatively, based on the statements of the Moldovan authorities. And we left 13 million cubic meters of gas in the pipeline. We spend this gas little by little on social needs. This is not a gas supply. We take the gas that is ours. This is not a supply. We are just using it. These are different things. Moldova does not supply us with gas.
It is interesting how Chisinau previously accused Moscow of energy blackmail with the aim of destabilizing the situation in Moldova. But at the same time, based on your words, I hear that some kind of energy blackmail is going on here by Chisinau towards Transnistria, so that people suffer and take action?
Let me tell you about some history. This is not the first time we've encountered inhumane actions from the Moldovan leadership towards Transnistria. I want to remind you of the COVID pandemic. It was 2020. Remember the hysteria that was global and regional? Large states failed in this problem and could not provide functional assistance to their citizens. I will not name them. Everything is clear. This is already history. We also faced this problem. And Chisinau was sure then that we would fail in this humanitarian catastrophe, that we would have no one to treat people, save them, that people would die, that all this will entail enormous social costs. But our administrative structure works very well, back then and today. And we coped with the pandemic situation better than our neighbors. We saved people, provided them with everything they needed. We received protection, medicines, and equipment through the territory of Moldova because the Ukrainian border was closed, and the Moldovan authorities kept what was needed for 2 months, not letting it into Transnistria. They believed that we would fail, and they would earn some political points from this. Now the situation is essentially similar. They are waiting for Transnistria to fail. But Transnistria will not fail. Discrimination on the basis of territory is a criminal offense. Discrimination, blocking energy resources, depriving people of the opportunity to live in warm apartments and enjoy the basic benefits of civilization. This is done artificially, politicizing this issue.
You said that Chisinau is doing this for political benefits. For what political benefits, and most importantly, from whom?
You asked a question before, and this is the answer to the question you have just asked. By claiming destabilization, that Moscow wants to destabilize Moldova, I wonder how does this look physically? These are just statements, slogans. Moldovan politicians love to speak in the language of slogans. They say a slogan, but no one knows what is behind it. How can Transnistria destabilize the situation in Moldova? Explain it to me. It is difficult for us. How will this look in practice? They want to accuse Russia of destabilization. This is the goal. Accusing Russia, accusing the so-called regime in Transnistria. There are no other goals. And of course, these statements by Moldovan politicians, both the president and the prime minister, about the withdrawal of Russian peacekeepers from Transnistria, This is completely beyond comprehension. This is a completely different institution. I would like to remind you that the 1992 agreements on the cessation of hostilities and the peaceful resolution of the Transnistrian issue remain in effect between Moldova and the Russian Federation. July 1992. Based on this international document, the peacekeepers were brought here, to Transnistria. And here in Transnistria, there is a joint peacekeeping mission. This is Russia, this is Transnistria and Moldova. Peacekeepers are also participating in the process of peaceful regulation. So, according to all the statements made by all the international partners of the 5+2 format, the withdrawal of peacekeepers is possible only after a complete, comprehensive solution to the Transnistrian issue. And that's it. This issue can no longer be touched. It is taboo. And now, using the energy crisis, Moldovan politicians are talking about peacekeepers, about their withdrawal. This is not good enough. This is simply politicization of the process.
You agreed to vote, to take part in the European referendum in Moldova. You voiced your readiness to move towards rapprochement with Chisinau since last summer. So you are going to meet them halfway. But at the same time, we see that Chisinau is completely ignoring your position. Is there any point in trying to revive this dialogue?
No, there is no point in reviving the dialogue. This is absolutely obvious. You understand? Without dialogue, everything becomes very difficult later, no matter what the dialogue is. As I see it from my side, firstly, this understanding must be broken down into several components. Dialogue in the 5+2 format. The 5+2 format is the established international format of our communication between Moldova and Transnistria. It includes Russia, Ukraine, the OSCE mediator and the US observers, and the European Union as guarantors. In fact, practically the entire globe is participating in the settlement process, and it worked, effectively or ineffectively. But nevertheless, issues were discussed there. Decisions were made by consensus. Both Transnistria and Moldova had equal rights, equal responsibilities. This did not suit Moldova at all. And in 2019, Moldova broke this format by not signing the final document in Bratislava in the fall of 2019. There was an attempt to rewrite it, to return for signing again, but Moldova did not agree to it. In fact, it froze this format. If there had been direct dialogue, maybe this energy crisis would not have happened.
Sandu's advisor said that if pro-Russian forces come to power in the parliamentary elections in Chisinau, Ukraine will have to intervene and come up with an immediate military response. How can one react calmly to this?
But by the way, I didn't react to it calmly. This is a well-known assistant Vlad Kulminsky, in his native language, which I also understand well. I am Ukrainian by nationality of Polish origin, and there is nothing bad about it. This is good. But I am Russian, you see, how everything is intertwined here. And I listened attentively to this interview where I actually caught the incitement of Ukraine against Transnistria. This is not good. I said so personally. Maybe for Sandu's party, any government will be pro-Russian, unless they are the majority. This is Moldovan politics. Very rarely has there been a monopoly in the Moldovan parliament. Right now, Sandu's party has a monopoly. After the parliamentary elections, maybe there will be no monopolies, there will be some coalitions. Of course, any group can be accused of pro-Russian positions, but it is the people who will make the choice. Do you understand this nuance? And it is their right to have a choice. That's all. You fight for your electorate as best you can. Prove your European values. Now, however, there will be a very big problem with LGBT in Europe. How is that possible? You see, they have canceled LGBT there. That's it. They need to take down the flags. But what should we do here? And in Moldova, these flags are hung on every corner. These gay parades took place, and everyone spat in that direction. The police had to protect them. And now they need to quickly rebuild again, to change positions, to adapt to the current trend. Well, we'll see. We haven't suffered from this. Transnistria cherishes traditional values. We have a traditional society. All this vulgarity is alien to. And besides, democracy does not mean everything is permitted. We should not confuse these concepts. Democracy is the power of the people. This is normal. And what was imposed on us, or imposed on Moldova, Bessarabia, Europe, is permissiveness. This is not good, and they will abandon this now. And thank God.
Aren't you worried about the potential militarization around the Transnistrian conflict? You are on one side, you have Moldova, which doesn't seem to be very friendly towards you. And then there is Ukraine, which seems ready to intervene. Aren't you worried about the situation you're in now?
Yes, it bothers everyone, and it bothers us. But we are not aggressors. We do not threaten Ukraine. We do not threaten Moldova. Any sane person, in principle, is against war. Ask any leader or president who will say that they support war, and we are also against war. We are against the war in Transnistria. And everyone knows my personal position very well. I am a military man. I understand what war is. I also graduated from a specific university, which gives me knowledge on the nuclear scenario. I would have been an expert in this matter at one time. I have not served in this unit for a long time, and I understand what war is, and what the nuclear development of war is, that it is unacceptable. I have always said that the war in Transnistria is a direct path to a Russia-NATO conflict, which will, of course, escalate into a nuclear catastrophe. Some believed me, some did not. Some thought I was scaremongering. No, I am not scaring anyone. The interests of both NATO and the Russian Federation will collide here. I have no doubt about it. This cannot be done. Ukraine has always been a good, kind neighbor for us. It has always been historically. And when there was a war in 1993, Ukraine accepted our refugees from Transnistria. Now, of course, there is trouble in Ukraine, and we take in refugees from Ukraine. Since the beginning of the hostilities, 340,000 Ukrainian citizens have entered the territory of Transnistria. Of these, approximately 40,000 remained for permanent residence, to live in Transnistria. The rest moved on, but they lived here, and there were no conflicts here. In Transnistria, if we are talking about the multinational segment, we have Ukrainian lyceums and Ukrainian gymnasiums. It's the center of Ukrainian culture if we are talking about our neighbors. Not to mention, of course, Russian schools, Russian gymnasiums, Russian cultural centers, and so on. We show how one can live in a large multinational family without hating each other. And this, by the way, irritates many. That is why we do not consider Ukraine an enemy for Transnistria. It is wrong if someone thinks so. Naturally, we do not consider Moldova an enemy either.
How can this conflict be resolved if, for example, NATO is looking for this clash with Russia? If NATO countries, if Europe does not benefit from the two sides coming to an agreement because they want to absorb Moldova into Europe, why should they discuss what the Transnistrian Republic wants and resume the 5+2 dialogue? Of course, they will never agree to this if it is not beneficial to them. And now, people are suffering in Transnistria, and in Moldova, they continue their pro-European line. Why do they need to resolve this dialogue?
I don't know. They speak differently when it comes to words. When it comes to words, everyone is for continuing the negotiation process in one form or another, in other venues, and so on. In principle, everyone unanimously calls for a peaceful solution to the Transnistrian issue. None of the participants in the 5+2 format is calling for any military solution to the Transnistrian issue. And by the way, the Moldovan leadership also calls for a peaceful solution to the Transnistrian issue. By and large, there is a consensus here, at least in principle. No one is pushing military aggression. No one is declaring that we will engage in revanchism and start a war in Transnistria. This is encouraging. By the way, I have previously said that the President of Moldova always publicly calls for peace talks, only peace talks, and in the future. But there will be no solution without talks. That is why this conflict is being frozen. But you see, unfreezing the conflict will be fraught with certain legal consequences. This is a violation of treaty obligations. Naturally, an attack on the tripartite peacekeeping forces is another factor. This will naturally create the necessary of protecting 220,000 citizens of the Russian Federation living here. These are the centers of Europe. Why generate a new conflict in the center of Europe? On the contrary, we need to think about ending everything. And by the way, any conflict ends only with negotiations. whether people want it or not, but sooner or later it will. Any wars, even 100 years old, ended with negotiations, and everything will end with negotiations. I am sure of it, sooner or later. That is why I am saying, gentlemen, there is no need to start anything bad here. We have completely peaceful intentions. We are not aggressors. We are not threatening anyone. Let's come to an agreement. And an agreement is a compromise. And a compromise is a movement towards each other by all parties. Not when one party gives up its positions, but when they move towards each other. And then solutions are possible. If one side gives up its positions, there is a change of power and these agreements are rolled back. And when there is a compromise, there is hope for their implementation.
You say that everyone ultimately wants to come to an agreement. But we see that there is an energy crisis in your republic. People are suffering, and no one seems to say anything or reprimand Chisinau.
Yes, you are correct. The so-called collective West, it in fact always acted as Moldova's advocates, no matter what they did. Did they hinder our supplies of goods, medicines? They justified it. Did they close our accounts? They justified it. Did they close our enterprises? They justified it. Do they block our foreign economic activity? They justified it. Do they block the movement of our voters to Moldova? They justified it. Do they not supply gas? They justify it. I have already said it more than once. I am already tired of talking about it. Dear Western politicians, do not act as advocates. This all ends badly. Analyze the situation. Make decisions honestly, like gentlemen, based on how it is in terms of the development of events. The truth is there in reality. It must be seen and understood. If Moldova declares that, for example, we do not accept any assistance, then ask what exactly we do not accept. How does this happen? Do not listen to these slogans. This suits everyone today. Therefore, apart from advocacy, Western politicians in principle have little success.
What I hear from you is that the collective West simply does not understand the issue. Do they believe what Chisinau tells them? And don't they understand perfectly well what they are doing?
Yes, I think there are not stupid people. They all understand perfectly well. But there are not stupid people. I've met them. I assure you, they all understand perfectly well. It's just the content. That's the task. That's all.
And how might this task change?
I wish I knew, but I'll express my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Somewhere in 2017, 2018, I gave an interview when I was asked when Transnistria would be recognized. By the way, I have no doubt about it, not one bit. I said when Transnistria would be recognized, after the next geopolitical catastrophe, which is just around the corner. You can look it up in the archive and see. This is the history of this region. There is a cyclicality. I love history. I respect it. There is such a concept as historical mathematics when cyclicality is confirmed by numbers. So, by and large, it turned out like this. Not to mention such grandiose catastrophes as the collapse of the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, after which, of course, all these conglomerates, former nations, have been shaken up. And I had no doubt about such a developing geopolitical catastrophe will happen. And so I said Transnistria will be recognized after the completion of the next geopolitical catastrophe. This was said in 2017 to 2018. In fact, a lot is being decided based on the results of the military conflict between Russia and Ukraine. When the negotiation processes begin, when there is an understanding of how all this will happen, probably the territorial fate of Transnistria will be decided one way or another. I am convinced that the Transnistrian people deserve recognition, state recognition, the recognition of their independence. We have earned it with our entire destiny and our entire life.
Let us hope that we are approaching this moment for all of us.
I agree with you. You know, everyone is waiting for this. In Transnistria as well. And I always said that this is a tragedy, but what can you do?
Vadim Nikolaevich Krasnoselsky, President of the Transnistrian Republic. Thank you very much for sharing your opinion on everything that is happening, not only in your republic, on salient topics, but also in general, what is happening in the world now, and how perhaps everything can be changed, if only there is such a will. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your interest and also for your time, because we need coverage, we need to be heard. Unfortunately, not everyone in Russia understands what is happening in Transnistria, not to mention other countries. Therefore, I am convinced that today's broadcast will make many people think and become interested in what is really happening in Transnistria. Thank you.